Last time, on the definitive origin of Black Goliath, after a life-changing battle with Atom Smasher that left him with a deadly rare form of radiation poison, Black Goliath, now calling himself Giant Man, was out to prove himself once again as a real superhero when he risked his life to save the world by allowing himself to be sucked within the Ninth Man, who was a living black hole, in order to block his pull, which was unsuccessful. Meanwhile, the environment inside of Ninth Man was so intense it drove Giant Man insane, almost killing him, if it wasn't for the quick response from his comrades, specifically the alien Wondar the Aquarian, who saved him. When coincidentally and inadvertently, his entropy-inducing null field he could never shut down completely expanded and negated Ninth Man's gravitational pull, causing it to collapse, thus saving the day and securing Project Pegasus. As time progressed, when Bill Foster was invited to lecture students at the Empire State University about alternate energy sources, it would be interrupted when the spectacular Spider-Man Peter Parker was battling Norton G. Fester, also known as Meteor Man, who was out to increase his strength to non-infinite, with stolen parts from a microwave energy generator from the ESU Coliseum. So Bill Foster as Giant Man quickly aided Spider-Man, which didn't fare so well, as Meteor Man managed to escape soon after with the stolen goods. Following this, Giant Man would properly introduce himself to Spider-Man before they joined forces to go after Meteor Man, who they tracked down in Hell's Kitchen at an abandoned building that housed his laboratory, as he was increasing his strength while simultaneously growing in size because the raw energy from his collection of precious meteors was being transmuted into microwaves that were transmitting directly into his nervous system via his power pack, allowing him to dominate our heroes in battle. However, unfortunately for Meteor Man, his transmitter began to overload, channeling too much unstable power within him, causing a negative feedback that blasted him thousands of feet into the air before he exploded, ending his life. Furthermore, Giant Man's health would start to become a concern for our heroes, as he became more depressed after finding out none of the country's finest biochemists, physicists, or radiologists could find a cure for his radiation poison. So his good friend Ben Grimm, accompanied with his girlfriend Elisa Masters, would try to cheer Bill Foster up and take his mind off his condition by taking him on an outing to the circus. However, unsurprisingly, chaos would ensue when the ringmaster and his circus of crime would be back at it with their dirty tricks. Nonetheless, our heroes, including Iceman, would take down the evildoers before turning them over to authorities. Soon after, back at Project Pegasus, when Giant Man was making adjustments atop of electromagnetic particulator in Section D2, which is the Human Research Lab, he would become dizzy and suddenly collapse. Ironically, as time progressed, it would be Ben Grimm suffering after being exposed to a new, highly radioactive strain of virus called Virus X. So now at the headquarters of the world-famous Fantastic Four, known as the Baxter Building, Giant Man and Reed Richards, also known as Mr. Fantastic, along with Captain America Steve Rogers, who was the one who found and recovered Ben Grimm, ran diagnostic tests on him, when suddenly he began to go through a metamorphosis after Virus X started affecting his cosmic irradiated cellular structure. Nevertheless, Bill Foster managed to isolate a sample of the virus, while Reed Richards worked on an antitoxin to neutralize the effects and cure Ben Grimm, which also gave Bill Foster some free time to comfort his friend and be by his side, as they next left together in Ben Grimm's sky scooter to talk in private about his situation and feelings, while Giant Man felt ashamed after realizing his own self-pity was nothing compared to what Ben Grimm was going through. Succeeding this, Giant Man and Ben Grimm would be called upon to join Captain America in violently disrupting the top secret organization called AIM, meaning Advanced Idea Mechanics, which consists of brilliant scientists and their hirelings, who were dedicated to the acquisition of power and the overthrow of all governments by technological means, as Giant Man went on to fight with more skill and determination than ever before to prove himself, before finally reaching the leader, a mental organism designed only for killing called MODOK, who was responsible for Ben Grimm's condition while also having the antidote to cure him. So after defeating MODOK, along with his highly trained agents and artificial life forms that were designed in the image of Ben Grimm, Giant Man, now within a research lab in AIM's vast complex, managed to get the antidote that would neutralize the virus by making the body temporarily immune to radiation, ironically, which can also possibly cure his own illness. Unfortunately, however, the casing of the hydro gun that held the antidote will fall and crack, leaking precious antitoxin, which left only enough for one use. So Giant Man, in a selfless act, rightfully used it on Ben Grimm, who was thereafter cured from his illness, while Giant Man continued on living with his, as he felt the radioactive poisoning raging through his own body. Soon after, Giant Man would once again suddenly collapse unconscious, so Ben Grimm quickly rushed him to the Baxter building, where Reed Richards would measure the full extent of the damage to his nervous system using his physio sensors, while Ben Grimm helplessly looked on, concerned for his friend. Following this, Giant Man would regain consciousness, while the physio sensors would show his internal organs were severely damaged, and he'll soon begin exhibiting outward signs of decay. So Reed Richards decided to fly Ben Grimm to Canada in order to get the researcher, Dr. Walter Lankowski, a highly specialized radiologist that's also a professor of biophysics at McGill University in Montreal, since Dr. Walter was secretly the superhero Sasquatch after being exposed to gamma radiation. Furthermore, when Ben Grimm finally returned with the doctor, who went on to examine Bill Foster for 7 consecutive hours while performing every test conceivable, the results would come back that he was terminally ill, beyond recovery. Subsequently, Bill Foster refused to be bedridden and decided to return to Los Angeles to put his affairs in order while spending the last days of his life with dignity, instead of lying around feeling sorry for himself, although Reed Richards was against it, wanting to still run tests in order to try and find a cure. So shortly after, Ben Grimm took Bill Foster back home in the Fantastic Four's Pogo plane, where he was greeted by his whiz kids along with his girlfriend, Celia, who never knew he was suffering from the deadly illness. Following this, our heroes, which now included Spider-Woman Jessica Drew, would discover Atom Smasher was alive and had created a doomsday weapon called Neutral Load that was powered by the atomic energy of his own body, which if detonated would release a flood of deadly neutron rays into the nearby city, killing millions if the government doesn't pay him billions to prevent it. Luckily, Bill Foster created a high-yield scanner module that detected the location of Atom Smasher's unique form of radiation, although Ben Grimm didn't want Bill Foster to tag along, afraid the strain would be too much for his weakened condition. However, Bill Foster wanted to see if Atom Smasher was indeed actually alive, as he next bravely took him on despite the risk. Surprisingly, Atom Smasher was revealed to be Michael English, the brother of the original Atom Smasher, who he shockingly paid to assassinate, after they together developed a process which could transform a man into a living nuclear energy. Furthermore, Giant Man, lacking the necessary strength to defeat the new Atom Smasher, but only managed to inadvertently damage the neutral load, would cause it to overload and explode, killing the new Atom Smasher when he tried to activate it. Following this, Bill Foster would collapse unconscious. However, luckily, Ben Grimm prior discovered from Spider-Woman that her body had built an immunity to the rare form of radiation poison after the venom in her blood produced an antitoxin. So with the help of Dr. Walter and the sacrifice of Spider-Woman, who risked losing her immunity factor when she provided Bill Foster with the massive blood transfusion, Bill Foster would finally be cured of the deadly illness hours later. Succeeding this, now almost back to normal, Bill Foster would now search for a way to fortify his cellular structure, since his internal organs were still damaged, preventing him from safely becoming giant size again. So as time progressed, Bill Foster, who now retired as a superhero, will be seen flying out to New York with his girlfriend to visit Ben Grimm in the hospital after he was brutally beaten by Gladiator, the Imperial Guard of the alien Shi'ar Empire. Then thereafter, when the world's most brilliant geneticist, Herbert Edgar Wyndham, also known as the High Evolutionary, built a Septa in Antarctica, Bill Foster decided to join his team of hired technicians after he heard the High Evolutionary was working on a genetic project, which Bill Foster could possibly use to develop something that would strengthen him. However, unbeknownst to Bill Foster, he was secretly hired to design and construct a vibranium bomb, which when detonated will mutate everyone on Earth. So when Bill Foster found this out, he stuck a note into a capsule that had the coordinates of the facility and a warning message secretly onto one of the High Evolutionary soldiers' mech suits that were to be deployed into Wakanda in order to obtain the vibranium, which unsurprisingly the chieftain of Wakanda, the Black Panther T'Challa, and his men would discover and go on to notify the West Coast Avengers about the incident. Meanwhile later, Bill Foster went on to spy on the High Evolutionary, who was having a meeting with newly arrived Avengers, only to discover they were not engaging in battle. So Bill Foster had to figure a way to assist them. So he quickly went to retrieve his untested new formula to strengthen his cellular structure before growing into Giant Man, which was a success, as the pure mass began to cleanse the damage the radioactive poison did to his internal organs the longer he stayed giant size, as he went on to battle the now also giant size High Evolutionary to a standstill, since the High Evolutionary's psychic blast had no effect on Giant Man. So surprisingly, the High Evolutionary retreated to other matters, leaving Giant Man, Barbara Morse, also known as Mockingbird, along with Tiger, Greer Nelson, and Moon Knight, Mark Spector behind in the collapsing Citadel. Furthermore, Giant Man would next be dropped off in Newark, New Jersey by our heroes using their Quinjet before he left to Los Angeles to find Hank Pym, while Moon Knight felt Giant Man wasn't ruthless enough to work with them. Furthermore, now home, Bill Foster would get a visit from an inspiring scientist named Arlo Samuelson, who was following Bill Foster around all day, wanting him to read his 200-page manuscript on the theory of levitation, hoping to get a job, which Bill Foster felt the theory was a waste of time and initially dismissed it, until much later when he decided to give the documents a read, which he would find impressive, even though the calculations were slightly off. However, consequently, it was too late, as Arlo, who felt ignored and unappreciated by everyone, including his fiancée, who refused to marry a jobless bum, decided to next drink the unstable levitation serum while wearing a protective suit, when suddenly the feedback made him believe it was dangerous enough to kill him if he touched any inanimate object that was grounded. So now that he was stuck levitating while also being able to make things levitate towards him, he decided to search for a cure, which he theorized gold would stabilize the effects, since it's a highly conductive metal. Subsequently, his ventures would make news as a rampaging supervillain out of control. So Bill Foster, who happened to hear the broadcast on a radio, went on to try and stop him before he did something he'll regret. Unsurprisingly, Bill Foster as Giant Man would be forced to battle Arlo, who refused to listen to reason after feeling betrayed. Luckily, Giant Man would convince him to stand down while letting him know he believed in his theory, and there wasn't no deadly feedback because the levitational energy that was driving him insane would only discharge when grounded. Following this, his fiancée would forgive him and Giant Man would get him a job at Stark West. Thereafter, Giant Man, who made himself the appropriate height of 12 foot, would be hired by Dr. Edwin Earl Hawkins to work at the Stain International Manufacturing Compound on Long Island, New York, after Hank Pym wasn't available, and Reed Richards referred him to assist Dr. Hawkins in finding a quantum mechanical model to create more subatomic particles. So Giant Man went on to obtain a Pym particle generator and a wide-spectrum electromagnetic probe, when suddenly there was trouble when employees were trapped within the manufacturing plant. So Giant Man, who was still feeling weak, quickly sprung into action by growing 25 feet before lifting and tossing a forklift through the reinforced steel door, and next desperately went on to shut down the mass acquisition unit at the center of the factory, saving lives before falling unconscious. Then after awakening in the infirmary, encountering the head of the project, Dr. Michael Stockton. Nevertheless, Giant Man would come to the conclusion something nefarious was going on, which his suspicion was correct, when he, along with Dr. Hawkins, discovered they were being used to create warheads that function off Pym particles, key to increase mass without altering size, which was the cause of the prior incident in the manufacturing plant, which happened to be a chain reaction during a test run that destroyed every mass acquisition warhead unit except the prototype. While shockingly, Dr. Michael Stockton was revealed to be the supervillain Dr. Nemesis, who was planning to sell the warhead to the highest bidder from a number of foreign governments, as he was also able to alter his size, as well as having a new acquired ability of increasing the weight of objects without changing its size or mass, when he temporarily knocked Giant Man out with a shirt button that weighed 40 pounds only after he threw it, and it hit Giant Man in the chest. Nonetheless, he would quickly recover to grow in size before going on to bash Dr. Nemesis into submission, when suddenly a towering unknown behemoth came out of nowhere, calling himself Goliath, entered the room to do battle with Giant Man in a one-sided match where Giant Man was out of practice and out of shape, but had strategy on his side when he fluctuated his height in order to outsmart Goliath, while next using a steel beam to use as his advantage. Subsequently, the fight would go the distance as the building began to collapse in on itself. So now outside, Giant Man would try desperately to pull out all the stops, only to be defeated in the end, up until much later at the security compound of Stain Industries, where Giant Man would get his get back when he decided to fight dirty by throwing sand in Goliath's eyes in order to temporarily blind him, since the sand couldn't be easily removed, which aided him in finally obtaining a victory over the Titan. Thereafter, Giant Man turned his attention to escaping Dr. Nemesis in a private jet, so he moved in quickly to try and stop the plane from taking off, but only managed in slowing it down. So he punched a hole into the tail wing to put a also pursuing Dr. Hawkins within it, before Giant Man shrunk himself to enter and aid Dr. Hawkins stop Dr. Nemesis, who went on to throw candies at them that struck with the force of a meteor shower, which Giant Man took the full painful force of. Surprisingly, Giant Man would easily knock out Dr. Nemesis with just a single blow to the back, but not before Dr. Nemesis turned on the mass acquisition warhead that weighed the plane down, after increasing in weight 20 times its normal weight, while still gaining exponentially, causing the plane to free fall from the sky, which, if it crashed into the ground, it would unleash potential energy roughly equivalent to 70 megatons that destroyed anything from miles away. So Dr. Hawkins suggested Giant Man hold on to the bomb and shrink himself along with it, as he himself assembled quickly with the materials on hand, so Giant Man could generate significant inertial friction of anti-graviton waves that, when rapidly growing back to giant size again, he'll consume the mass by pulling it within him to a bordering dimension he accesses when altering his size, when gaining extra dimensional biomass, which was a success, while the private jet they were in was also pulled within another dimension without them, causing them to free fall once again. Luckily, Giant Man's anti-graviton weight his body was generating protected them from the high impact fall that surely would have killed them. As time progressed, Bill Foster will be seen with Hank Pym saving the life of Philip Javert, the swordsman from another timeline, after he was critically injured by an evil version of the Vision, known as Anti-Vision. Thereafter, Bill Foster will be seen helping Clint Barton, better known as Hawkeye, and his wife Mockingbird relocate to a compound in Palos Verdes, South Los Angeles, at the request of the Vision, in order to start up another expansion team of the West Coast Avengers. Succeeding this, when over 500 men, women, and children were infected by a rare flesh-eating bacteria, Bill Foster will be seen with Iron Man and the Black Panther, working on a cure at the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. And then later, when Spider-Man was suffering from a terminal radiation illness that was shutting down his body, Bill Foster suggested Dr. Bruce Banner might know a cure, since he, along with Reed Richards and Tony Stark, who also were present, weren't experts in the field of radiation-based infections. Unfortunately, Bruce Banner, who was in his Hulk form in the desert, ended up becoming a problem when he went into rage mode after uncovering Iron Man tried to hypnotize him after attempting to sedate him with tranquilizer gas. So Giant Man, who is now referred to as Goliath, tried to incapacitate the Hulk with a giant boulder, only for Iron Man to come crashing into his shin after being punched by the Hulk, which immediately took Goliath out the fight. Thereafter, Goliath will be seen one Saturday night playing at Ben Grimm's superhero poker tournament at his penthouse apartment, along with other superheroes, while later Ben Grimm will pay Goliath a visit in his lab, when suddenly a metallic-looking hot pop machine called Cauldron the Scolding Man burst in and took off with Goliath's prototype dimensional wave inducer worth millions. Subsequently, Ben Grimm will be the one to defeat Cauldron after he tried to use boiling green liquid to stop him. Thereafter, Cauldron would be apprehended and Ben Grimm would bid farewell to his friend. Moreover, during the aftermath of a reality TV show gone wrong in Stamford, Connecticut, involving a team of superpowered teens called the New Warriors, who accidentally caused a catastrophe when almost 900 civilians lost their lives, Goliath would voluntarily join the search and rescue with other heroes, which following this catastrophic event, the US government would bring forth the Superhuman Registration Act, which required all individuals with superhuman abilities to register with the government while divulging their true identities to the authorities and submitting to training, along with being sanctioned in the manner of federal agents or risk being arrested. However, Captain America, along with others including Bill Foster, felt that violated civil liberties, while Iron Man and other members of the superhero community sided with the government, feeling the new law was a natural evolution of the superhuman's role in the modern world to regain public trust, which unfortunately was the beginning of the superhero civil war, as Goliath was now part of the resistance, known as the Secret Avengers, against his friends Ben Grimm, Hank Pym, and Reed Richards, who joined Iron Man's pro-registration. Furthermore, Bill Foster will be involved in hijacking of a SHIELD prison bus on the Washington Bridge area that contained unregistered heroes known as the Young Avengers. Succeeding this, the secret Avengers would be notified that a petroleum chemical plant was on fire and hundreds of civilians were trapped inside, only to discover it was a setup by Iron Man and his team, who first tried to convince the secret Avengers to join the pro-registration, which failed, thus causing an all-out brawl with superheroes fighting superheroes, as a giant-sized Hank Pym battled his once good friend Bill Foster in a colossal battle at the abandoned Stark petrochemical plant, when suddenly the battlefield would be split apart by a tremendous bolt of lightning, heralding the appearance of the presumably dead Thor, which was actually a cyborg clone, codenamed Ragnarok, both Hank Pym and Reed Richards prior created, with the Thor DNA provided by Tony Stark, as Ragnarok, who was out of control, mercilessly attacked the secret Avengers with vicious intent, shockingly instantly killing Goliath in one devastating lightning strike through his chest by way of his mechanical hammer, while surprising and shocking everyone. So a now disturbed Susan Storm, who was somewhat pro-registration, decided to help the secret Avengers get away before any more harm could be done, while the pro-registration force was also left devastated, discouraged, and confused at what just happened, which would later cause heroes to switch sides on both fronts. Moreover, after the dust was settled, the New York Police Department, SHIELD, fire crew, and paramedics would have their hands full clearing the streets of rubble, investigating the crime scene, and caring for the injured. Unfortunately, thereafter, Goliath would be laid to rest in New Jersey while wrapped in a large sheet of strong, flexible, water-resistant material called a tarp, and lowered in his grave by boom trucks equipped with hydraulic cranes, as he took up 38 burial plots that was required to accommodate his body, since the pro-registration heroes couldn't find a way to shrink him back to normal size. Nevertheless, Tony Stark paid for all the expenses, while being in attendance along with the Fantastic Four, Peter Parker, Mary Jane Watson, and Aunt May. Then later, T'Challa and his wife Aurora Monroe, who Bill Foster had a crush on, and Bill's family and loved ones that consisted of academics, lawyers, and doctors, who later went on to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the United States government, Stark Enterprise, and Fantastic Four Incorporated, while Bill's nephew, Tom, a student at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, vowed to crack the Pym particle formula and avenge his uncle's death one day. That being said, Dr. Bill Foster is Marvel Comics' Goliath.